Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very good afternoon. First and foremost, thank you to IIUM, thank you to Centra, thank you to the organizing committee, thank you to the drafters of the Declaration of the Sanctity of Life. Thank you for inviting me and inviting Mercy Malaysia to share a little bit of our experience and also a little bit of perhaps our input and perspective. Alhamdulillah, you've heard many speakers in the morning and you will hear some more after myself today. So I've decided not to repeat whatever's been said and also not to touch very much on what's likely to be said after this because time is short. So we'll be focusing on what the perspectives from the humanitarian world are, as well as from the perspectives of a humanitarian, as well as the perspectives of humanity as a whole. This is important, I think, in the ultimate drafting of this declaration, because like it or not, ladies and gentlemen, and this is where I will start, we all feel for what is happening around the world. And I think the main reason why we're here is we feel very much what's happening in Gaza, to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in the West Bank as well. Let's not forget the West Bank. But the reality of the world is such that while we can advocate, and we should, and we shall not and must not stop, we must also sometimes take stock of what is really happening out there and look at how things can be done better and perhaps how efforts like this can also achieve better success. And so to optimize our efforts today, that's where I will be coming from. Yeah, I think we have enough experts to draft the declaration, but that's where I'll be coming from a humanitarian perspective and how we will add value to it. So, the first slide, next slide please, thank you. So, from the humanitarian perspective, first and foremost, these are the humanitarian principles which organizations like Mercy Malaysia, Médecins Sans Frontières, Islamic Relief, if you've heard of them, yeah, Care International, World Vision, Save the Children, Oxfam, and the UN agencies and the International Committee of the Red Cross, the International Federation of the Red Cross, Red Crescent, and all the National Red Cross, Red Crescents are supposed to adhere by. I say supposed to adhere by, yeah, because sometimes they are adhered to, sometimes they are not adhered to so well. Sometimes it is easier said than done. Yeah? For example, humanity, in which encompasses the sanctity of life and the right to life, as in Article 3 of the UN Human Rights Declaration, is very well embedded in the principle of humanity. Very easy to accept, yes, for all of us. Then it comes to the principle of impartiality, which means that organizations like Mercy Malaysia and myself, we should give aid and assistance without looking at, for example, a person's background, a community's creed, color, religion, political affiliation, etc., etc., etc. And in this day and age, you can add things like sexual orientation, geopolitical position, yeah, etc., etc. again. Yeah, neutrality. Then it becomes a bit more difficult. Yeah, neutrality. Are you neutral, ladies and gentlemen? Any of you here neutral? Let me see a show of hands. Yes. So you see, there begins the problem. Yeah. As a humanitarian and as humanitarians like ourselves in Mercy Malaysia, while we support your efforts here, that's why I said we want to give input to add value. Unfortunately or fortunately, we do not have the luxury as humanitarians of sometimes being too deeply embedded in ivory towers. Our brother moderator just graduated from SOAS, I hear, a very esteemed school of higher learning, yes? And it's good that he's here now, yeah? Because if he stayed in SOAS, he'll try to be neutral, yeah. So it's not easy, yes? But that's a principle of humanitarian aid, neutrality. What does it mean, ladies and gentlemen? In a conflict, I don't take sides. Now then again, is that possible? Yes? Okay. Independence of action. Now this is easier in a way, Well, I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, before 2018, in Malaysia, it was very difficult to be independent in our actions, okay? When we gave aid during annual floods on the East Coast. Why? Because Malaysia being so politically partisan, yeah, in states like Kelantan, almost impossible to be independent, yeah? But Mercy Malaysia stuck to its guns and we were independent, let me assure you. Much to the chagrin of both federal and state governments, okay, who were opposed to each other, right? So it's not easy, yeah? It sounds easy, but it's not so easy, okay? Next slide, please. Thank you. Next. Right, so somebody's going to speak on law after this, I think, Azrael from Centra, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is the basis of some of what you are discussing. Ladies and gentlemen, International Humanitarian Law, IHL. Who's the custodian of the IHL? Do you know? The custodian of the IHL is the International Committee of the Red Cross, not the International Federation, and not the Malaysian Red Crescent, not the British Red Cross, but the International Committee of the Red Cross based in Geneva, yeah? So that's the International Humanitarian Law, okay? It, among other things, yeah, is to ensure that in armed conflict, yeah, things are as fair as possible, or as good as possible, yeah, in short. And it includes, of course, the rapid, unimpeded passage of humanitarian aid during armed conflict, which at the moment, which we are seeing not just in Gaza, but in any other major conflict around the world at the moment, it is being impeded, yeah? In Sudan, for example, no aid is going through the borders, either through Chad or Egypt, except in very, very subversive and under the current methods, yeah? Next, please. This is what IHL is for, yeah? And it is so that the right of belligerents to adopt means of injuring the enemy is not unlimited. So again, somebody's going to speak about law, so I'm not going to go too deep, but you get what I mean, you get what it means there, yeah? So you can, for example, I can take aim at Romil here and try and shoot him, yeah? But if I've shot him, I shouldn't be going over to him and pump the whole magazine, 30 bullets into him. He's gone already. Why the need to inflict more disfigurement to the already dead enemy? Yeah. So that's an example. Yeah. Next, please. Next slide. Right. So principles of IHL. These are the principles. The distinction between civilians and combatants, which at the moment in Gaza is sadly not adhered to. Yeah. Everybody is being bombed. So that's a problem, yeah? The prohibition of attacks, yeah, against those hors de combat. Hors de combat means those who are already affected by the combat, those who are wounded, those who are prisoners of war. They may be in the opposing force, but they're already incapacitated. You're not supposed to shoot them anymore. Just like I said just now, I've shot Romil, he's already surrendered, why should I shoot him again? Yeah, etc. Yeah. The prohibition of infliction of unnecessary suffering. This use of starvation as a method of warfare at the moment in Gaza is totally prohibited under this principle. The principle of proportionality. Now, this is the big thing in Gaza at the moment, yeah, which differs from Ukraine, for example. In Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen, there has been more life lost, there has been more property damage, there have been more people killed and injured, yeah, if you put both the Ukrainian and Russian casualties together. The Russian military itself has lost over 300,000 injured and dead, yeah? However, most of those who are dead and injured are combatants, yeah? Combatants in war. The principle of proportionality here, the problem with the Zionist regime is that it's declared openly that it's okay if it's going after 2 people or 1 person to kill another 10 or 20 civilians. That's totally disproportionate, yeah? To bomb a whole building when you're actually looking after just 1 person, looking for just 1 person, you bomb the whole building. That's totally out. The notion of necessity. Is it necessary to bomb the UNRWA schools? Okay? Is it necessary to bomb all the hospitals? To incapacitate all the hospitals? Yeah. The principle of humanity, again, must be there in war. So that's basically what IHL is all about. Next, please. So this is another concept which I'm going to introduce to you. This is a very operational concept. humanitarian space. Yeah? So what does it mean? So agency space for Mercy Malaysia, for UNHCR, for UNRWA, it's the center, or rather the agency's ability to operate freely and meet humanitarian needs in accordance with the principles of humanitarian action. The principles just now, yeah? Independence of action, impartiality, neutrality, etc., humanity. It can also be the space of the affected community. So the affected community and its space to live safely, yeah, in the middle of a war, in the middle of a conflict, yeah, which is currently not being respected, of course, in Gaza, because people are being asked to move from one so-called safe zone to another, when at the end of the day, there's no more safe zones, yeah? So, next please. Next. Next. Yes, so humanitarian space can also be within the realms of international humanitarian law. So, within the international humanitarian law, as we just went through just now, is there enough space? Is there enough space for both the belligerents, but also for, most importantly, for the affected population? Yeah? And of course, in the end, when it comes to delivering aid optimally, yeah, whether there's enough space in the complex political, military, and legal ways and means, yeah, whether there's enough space to give aid. At the moment, the problem is COGAT, the Israeli agency that's supposed to be coordinating aid into the occupied territories, say they allow aid to go in, yeah? But we know there are administrative blocks, yeah? And there's also a very practical block. You've closed Rafah crossing, so how in the world are we going to send in a lot of aid, yes? So that is a problem, yeah? Next, please. So access to humanitarian aid is guaranteed under IHL. So that's rule number 55. The parties to the conflict must allow and facilitate rapid and unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief for civilians in need, which are impartial in character and conducted without any adverse distinction subject to the right of control. Yeah? So meaning, yes, we understand belligerent parties need to control some of the highways, but they should still allow aid to go through. Yeah? Next, please. Now, that's a more detailed discussion on humanitarian space from an access from one of our international colleagues, CARE International. Yeah? So basically it says that space must be guaranteed by countries, those who are belligerent, but also by donor countries, yeah? Meaning countries outside of the actual realm of conflict but trying to give aid, like the US, for example. The problem is at the moment in Gaza, the US tries to give aid through airdrops and through this pier, which is has now been confirmed to not to work. Yes, did you know that the pier that they have across the beach in Gaza, well, it's off now. Yeah, it's no longer operational. Yeah, so and then of course there is protection of civilians, including against sexual violence. Yeah, now we must be impartial here. So any sexual violence perpetrated by anyone, yeah, is wrong. Okay, by any side. Yeah. So again, and of course the space and the access of the displaced populations. Now, technically those in Gaza are not refugees, they are, in humanitarian lingo, internally displaced people, yeah, because they're displaced internally inside their own country. So that includes IDPs as well. Next, please, next slide. So that's Gaza. So because of the terrible restrictions and the adherence to international humanitarian law by the Zionist regime, so Gaza has effectively been split, yeah, and into its constituent areas: Khan Yunis, Dar al-Balah in the middle areas, Rafah in the south, Gaza City, yeah, Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia in the north, and of course the problem with that is movement from one area of Gaza to another is also very restricted. And on top of that, of course, there is this bombing of and annihilation of both medical as well as shelter facilities, both hospitals and schools. Yeah? So Mercy Malaysia, because of that, worked through the UN, through the WHO, EMTCC, Emergency Medical Team, because we're a certified emergency medical team organization. We managed to send in teams into Gaza earlier this year. It has stopped momentarily now because Rafah crossing is closed. And the only crossing that is open is Karim Shalom, and we'll have to go through Israel to get in, which is not very easy for us, noting that Malaysia has no diplomatic relations with Israel. Next, please. So now, ladies and gentlemen, with that, the functional principles of IHL, again, going back, looking at that map and looking at IHL again, yeah, there are 4 things there at the top. The rest we've already mentioned. So the functional principles, the right of self-defense, which Israel has used as an excuse or a reason, is at this moment being disproportionately used. Yes, you can argue it any way you want, but the right of self-defense is beyond its expiry date already. Yeah, because October 7th was what, almost a year ago. Yeah, now. Yeah, what self-defense is there left? But the principle of proportionality is of course gone because they are bombing everything. Now the responsibility to protect, it's the responsibility of belligerent parties to protect civilians and those who are non-combatants and the institutions, hospitals, clinics, schools, etc. Sanctity of healthcare facilities and medical workers. Hundreds of healthcare workers have been affected, some killed, many hundreds have been injured, and some have been captured, tortured, some have been released. The director, one of the surgeons of Ashifa was actually killed in detention, yes? And the rest we've already discussed. Next, please. Next. So attacking or destroying, removing or rendering useless objects indispensable to the survival of civilian population is prohibited, yeah, under HL. Next, please. So I'm going faster because the bell has rung. Next, please. So at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, all hospitals and health facilities are either destroyed or severely damaged. There are no hospitals at the moment functioning optimally with CT scans, with OTs, with labor rooms functioning optimally. There are none, 0, okay? Makeshift and field hospitals have also not been spared. UNRWA schools used as shelters have also been attacked, and safe zones, like I mentioned just now, have been subjected to assault again and again. Next. So these are our specialized surgical teams of surgeons and anesthetists whom we deploy inside Gaza, in Rafah. Next. We spent about 50 days there. Yeah. Next, we trained some of the local health workers. Now, in comparison, ladies and gentlemen, this is another area of conflict, which is in Myanmar, which Mercy Malaysia is also operating in Rakhine. If you've not been following the news, Myanmar is undergoing tremendous conflict at the moment. And it's not just restricted to Rakhine now, but involving many other states as well. In fact, the whole country. Yeah? But the situation in Rakhine, in Myanmar, is slightly different in that most of the institutions for care are still spared. Okay? Although the fighting is terrible, atrocities have been committed. Yeah? Next, please. So these are some of our work there, distribution. Because of the destruction and lack of water, etc., we have to give things like hygiene kits. Next. I'm going to be very quick here. Food and water distribution, of course. So food, the use of starvation as a weapon. Now this dates back, of course, to the medieval ages, yeah? And clean water, ladies and gentlemen. Water in Gaza is already a problem, even without conflict. Why? Because there is heavy salination of the water, yeah? And the water bed is very shallow. This has been for hundreds of years, yeah? It's been made worse by Israeli restrictions of the water supply prior to the war. With the war, it's been made even worse. Yeah? Mercy Malaysia had a desalination plant in Khan Yunis, but it's been bombed. That was before the war, the desalination plant. It lasted until January. Yeah? So water is a very big thing. Next, please. So medical points now are the makeshift, if you like, health centers. Next.
Dr. Perdaus, sorry, maybe just 2 more minutes.
Yeah. Next. So we have one in Al-Mawasi, but Al-Mawasi itself has been bombed. Our medical point has not been, but several others have been. Okay, so we are still waiting whether ours is still safe. Next, please. And again, in comparison, in Myanmar, the facilities are still intact generally, the care facilities. Although, like I said, the war is terrible, atrocities are being committed. Yeah? Next. And so, I will close with this question, ladies and gentlemen. So, the sanctity of life. Alhamdulillah. And we have Rabbi here, who we appreciate very much, of course, Rabbi Weiss, for being here with us. And we've heard this morning from, and we'll hear again this afternoon, I think, from other faiths as well. There's no question that all the holy books and all the faiths say basically the same thing. We must do good to your fellow man, You must not kill, you must not steal, you must not do all these things. That is bad, yes? Have we ever succeeded though? How far do you want to go back? I put it to you that even since the UN Declaration of Human Rights and ever since the Second World War, we have not succeeded, okay? There have been wars and there have been genocides. Just 2 weeks